and welcome to Mortgage Mondays. I have Tom Hallock with Loan People coming back to join us. Hi, Tom.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Randy.
Yes, of course. We're going to do things a little differently. I am traveling, so this is going to be a recorded broadcast. I usually like to do these live, and that is an explanation for the chaos behind me is I'm just at somebody else's house right now and I'm borrowing a room. So today we are going to, I think, kind of just do a smaller video. It probably won't fill up 30 minutes because it might feel a little bit repetitive from last week. We're just talking about what are the interest rates doing, how is the recession affecting it, whether we're in one or not, just what is the current news doing with the housing market, because I still feel as I peruse the internet that I get a lot of confusing information out there that is very conflicting and lots of different opinions as to what is actually happening. So do Tom and I know exactly what is to come? Absolutely not. Nobody has that type of power, but we can certainly comment on what we have seen this week and how we feel the general direction of things are going for right now. So Tom, can you go ahead and kick us off with just some update on what the numbers were like this week and your mortgage applications for this week and kind of the overall vibe at your office?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me on again. Always fun to come on and chat about
Yes,
mortgages and markets and all the fun stuff.
close.
And yeah, I mean, the around the water cooler chat has actually been pretty positive. It's like very things have, and I know we'll probably talk more about this, but things are definitely evening out a little bit. There was, the last couple of years of insanity, and then it got very quiet for a moment there where everybody was kind of like taking a breath and seeing what's going to happen. But since the last Fed meeting, the Fed rate is not the same as mortgage rates, which I think we've talked about before and you've probably talked about on other videos. But after that Fed meeting, the rate market did improve slightly. So that's a positive thing. It seems like buyers are a little bit more or a little bit less wary, a little bit more apt to just take a look and see how things are looking out there. So it's been cautiously optimistic actually over the last couple weeks for sure. What about for you?
Yeah, I would say the same. So maybe close to a month ago, lots of people, both buyers and sellers, were feeling very concerned to really make or do any moves because just everybody's on the edge of their seats just for the economy as a whole, and can't quite get a grasp of what to expect. And so for listings to suddenly have this huge drop off on showings and activity and so many price reductions happening out there, that can be a really confusing message to everybody of our homes losing value. It doesn't necessarily need to mean that homes are losing value. It certainly does mean that the listing agents and sellers need to be on their game as far as their pricing strategy and need to be paying attention to the home that they are bringing to market, because what is happening is inventory is coming to market compared to the whole last year when zero inventory was coming to market. And that was so unprecedented, the amount of lack of inventory that was happening, that we just really need to try to put into perspective that it's healthy to have some of this come back. And then to apply some actual numbers to the inventory and what it's been doing is, I think at this time we're in kind of a light seller's market for 4.5 months, maybe 5. And then you get up to 6 months of inventory, you start being balanced. There is some speculation from people that really crunch this data. So I do tend to kind of lean into what they're saying and doing. People that want to follow numbers all day long, I'll listen to what you have to say. So they are saying that maybe we will be into a light buyer's market going into 2023. So that could be pretty interesting. Does that need to be devastating to, sellers and whatnot? No, but it is an adjustment certainly from anybody that was considering selling 6+ months ago.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've been talking a lot about with people is, for the last couple of years when there was such low inventory, there were so many buyers out, rates were incredible. There were a lot of buyers that lost out completely where
Yeah.
they didn't even get to, put a reasonable offer in. If they had the minimum down payment, you needed that plus money to go over list price. And
Yeah.
so just that little bit more of equilibrium actually does bring a group of buyers, or should and can and is bringing a group of buyers back to the table that were completely squeezed out. So
That is absolutely true. I think I had about in the heat of 2021, I think I had about 10 active buyers and I lost about half of them. They just got tired of it and they couldn't push, they couldn't
Because
fight. Who wants
yeah,
to do
because what can you do at a certain point? Like if you're getting beat on so many different transactions and
that?
there's so little inventory to fall back on. So that's where that equilibrium helps a ton, like we're talking about. If things even out a little bit, that gets some of those people, at least allows some of those people back into the market.
And I know that you want to say when you hear those explanations of like, really, it should be better for everybody, but what about the sellers? They were really winning, having $100,000 over their list price. Well, yes, of course. But then what did they do whenever they had to then go back to the market to purchase the next home? And I know that's not the case for everybody. So probably the true winners were second homeowners that didn't need to find shelter after selling their, pot of gold. So for the second homeowners, yes, that was quite a little run that you probably had there to be able to sell those off and make a great profit. But sellers had a huge problem if they needed to go find a place after selling the home that they were living in, and that it was really difficult to make any promises that we would solve that problem for them. So um, balance is good, and you just need to find the right people to be partnering up with to explain what's going on out there and to put a good game plan together. So Tom, I want to share the graph that you had so that we can kind of zoom in on the interest rates just a little bit, because part of the confusing articles that get sent my way, I was telling Tom in our little meeting before that I do my own research. Obviously, I have my own people that I follow. And so I have the information that I, want to be taking in for my clients and everything. But then I go into Facebook world just to peruse and scroll, and Facebook is taking a guess that like, oh, you like to look at housing stuff. And so they send me all kinds of articles and they're also contradicting. And one thing that I keep reading is that they are talking about the Fed rate having been increased for that Friday meeting a few weeks ago. And so interest rates are, it's just a confusing message of that will cause the mortgage rates to go up. And so get ready for the housing industry to really, hit a huge lull here. And it's like, well, that's just not quite what's happening boots on the ground wise. So here is something I want to have Tom speak on. What are we looking at here, Tom?
Yeah, so this is just a quick look at it's the 10-year treasury, which loosely mortgage rates follow. And so this is just from mid-April until current, which, we're in the first few days of August here. But as you can see, I mean, if you look where rates were back in mid-April and you trace that line all the way over to where we are now, they're even. So, I mean, you can obviously see like, mid-June, that's kind of where they started to spike.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we're right where we were 4 months ago. So, I mean, the Fed has raised the short-term interest rates, but this is just a perfect example of mortgage rates. Generally, they can follow Fed rates if the fundamentals are all the same. But at the same time, it's a completely different market that's projecting based on other macroeconomic data, not just Fed rates.
Mm-hmm.
So, if someone was looking in mid-April, their
Mm-hmm.
buying power today is nearly exactly the same as it was then. So definitely worth looking into it, especially if somebody got pre-qualified maybe in mid-June and they thought, they can't make that payment work. It might be time to reach out again and see.
And something too from a realtor's perspective, seasonality, right in the middle of summertime. Now, all of summer, there's buyers out there. So I'm not trying to say there's no, what I'm about to say next, I'm not saying there's no buyers, but right in the middle of summer, you do have a slight drop off compared to, I have somebody peeking in. He can't come in, sir. I'm working right now. Go find dad. Huh? Okay, go find dad with that question, okay? Okay. He's hungry. So that's what are you
I
gonna do?
understand it. I get it.
He's traveling and he's very confused about what we're up to. Okay. So it's the middle of summer is what I'm talking about here. I'm gonna get back to my realtor brain. You have just the slightest decline of buyers compared to heavy spring and then late summer because everybody is on their vacations. So it's actually kind of good timing that it seems to me that the peak of those interest rates happen in the middle of the summer. Is that right?
Yeah,
So
this is June 13th right here is when they hit their peak there. So since
see,
then, it's been a great improvement.
yeah, I feel like you kind of have this perfect storm of the interest rates were the worst that people have seen ever, not ever, but just in this particular period of shopping. And the buyers are not as aggressive in the middle of summer. So Okay, you kind of have this perfect storm of the interest rates being at their peak for this year and also not as many buyers out there. So that time that I was talking about a month ago where both buyers and sellers are looking at me and like, what's going on out there? Well, it just really was a pretty big lack of demand. And so maybe, and I'll let you know as we kind of carry on into these next week or two or month, some demand will come back to help it not be such a rush towards a buyer's market because nobody wants that either. So I don't know. It'll be kind of interesting to see how August unfolds and into September too.
Yeah,
Um,
and I know, and I think you would probably be able to comment on this a little better than I could, but I feel like there's always a little bit of a lag as kids are going back to school. People have other things to focus on while they're getting all the back to school stuff ready. And I'm
yes.
wondering if like right after that, maybe people will say like, all right, we tabled it for summer. Let's see how fall's going to look, especially if rates are even over the course of that time. So
It is kind of interesting too because everything has been so extreme for the last 2 to 3 years, and there's been no routine, there's been no seasonality, so you can't really base off of like what was happening last year will happen this time this year. Like, no, we couldn't do any of that, and we're kind of still in that position too because I wonder um, as the news continues to come out about recession, no recession, and the economy, what will happen in that fall season? So, normally, if we're just kind of outside of all these, circumstances, the fall really takes a lull on inventory coming out. But I wonder if sellers are going to need to push and insist on still putting their inventory out there and getting their sales going. I just don't know. So I'm curious to see what is to come in our industry over the next few months. And I'm also ready for some stability, honestly. Like, it'd be really great if something could just
absolutely.
hang out for a little bit and be relaxed. So,
Yeah. Well, and a big predictor of, well, I would say stability, but the numbers that a lot of these economists look at as they're predicting these trends is jobs. And while the economy is retracting as a whole, the jobs
yes.
numbers were really strong. And in our market, specifically in Austin, I mean, jobs is the name of the game. I mean, there's so many employers moving headquarters here, expanding their campuses here. And so as far as, Austin specifically, we're going to be a little more resilient if there is some sort of downturn nationwide. We'll have a
That's
little bit of insulation. So
That is absolutely true. And I, kind of even more reason to just consider everybody's situation is different, but that some of those things that I read about that job market being so strong combined with inflation is there's this risk and concern that it will just kind of fuel our problem with inflation. So what that will happen is it will increase rents. So do you need to completely put to the table the idea of purchasing this year because of what's going on? Not necessarily. Certainly talk with a lender, talk with the people that are involved in your life and see what would be the right thing to come because most likely the news is correct about rents being increased, especially for the state of Texas and any other states that have property taxes. Everybody's homes appraised way too much. So we all have that coming our way, of course. Um, what other news do we have for the remainder of the year as far as any more Fed meetings, anything that you as a lender are looking towards as just more interesting information to come to give us a benchmark of what to expect?
yeah, any more Fed meetings are always interesting. I think they backed off a little bit in the last meeting, saying they probably will, if they increase rates again, the Fed rate again, it'll
Mhm.
be by a lesser amount.
Okay.
Um, Usually, what happens is when they make a decision like that, they'll do commentary after it, and
Hmm.
that is looked at more by the mortgage bond investors. So it's
Okay.
usually the day after the Fed meeting when if they do something surprising, if they say they were only going to raise it 1/4%, people were predicting that, and they raise it a full percent, that's when things might go haywire. But as
Okay.
long as they do it predicted, it's more about the commentary, kind of like what we're doing here, like what we're seeing now, but then also what they're predicting for the next quarter and the next year.
Okay.
So yeah, the Fed is definitely a big one. Inflation numbers are going to be really important through for the foreseeable future.
Hmm.
And then sometimes elections will have an effect on things, but
Yeah.
it's so hard to tell. And when it's not a presidential election, sometimes that'll be a little bit muted.
Yeah.
But what
Yeah.
about you? Is there anything that you're looking out for?
I think I am looking to see how the rest of this late summer, early fall season goes. Right now, my current listings that I have going, they had an increase in activity for this week. We had good pricing strategies set in place. I made sure that we did a make ready and that we are looking the best that we can coming to market. There's no place for homes that need some work. You're going to get overlooked at this time. There's too many options out there for buyers. But if you have a home that has paid attention and done some work and is looking fabulous, we had an uptick in viewings. So I want to see how the next few weeks go, maybe the next month, as far as that activity, and just kind of see what the fall will bring. So I don't know. I'm curious.
Yeah, it should be an interesting fall. I'm excited about it.
Yeah. I guess that can kind of conclude us. I think the main storyline here that Tom and I wanted to get out is that as far as the housing and the mortgage business is going, it was kind of a small uptick of activity and a slight, the interest rates really kind of cooled off a little bit from what we were seeing a month ago. So what that's bringing is just a balanced, equal space out there in the market. There's nothing crazy happening. So if you're buying, it's a good time to be looking, because what are the two scenarios, Tom, that you were telling me about before we met on here?
Yeah, I mean, the two scenarios are, if you think rates are going to go higher, then now is the best time that you can actually get your foot in the door with where they are now. If you
Mm-hmm.
think longer term rates are going to come back down, now is a soft enough market to where, there might be less buyers out there. And so
Mm-hmm.
you can actually win a bid, have some negotiating power. And then when rates do go back down, you can look at refinancing. So if you have skin in the game, then you're going to be on the winning side of it. But if you don't have skin in the game, then that's, you're just going to be in the heap with everybody else when whatever changes in the future with rates and the market and everything else. So
Yes. And then as far as my sellers go out there, it does not need to be Doomsville. You just need to put a plan together. So contact me independently. Tell me about your home. Tell me about your situation and your motives. And we just need to be strategic in the way that we come to market. And we can still get plenty of attention on your home, because we are not inside of a heavy buyer's market at this time. It is still very light sellers, maybe going into light buyer's market. It's balanced. Okay, I think that's going to kind of conclude for what we wanted to share with you guys today. I hope that was helpful in calming everybody's nerves out there as far as the housing industry goes. Thank you for coming online with me today, Tom.
yeah, thanks for having me, Randy. Always fun.
And if anybody wants to contact him, you're going to find his contact information in the description below, and we'll have him back on in a couple of weeks as always. So thank you so much, you guys.
Thanks, everyone.